This is Brother, Beyond the Craft, with Neil Thomas Allen and Taz Bachu.
Hello, good day and welcome to Brother Beyond the Craft. My name is Neil Thomas Allen and I am joined almost always by my lovely, endearing co-host, Taz Bachu. Taz, how are we, love?
All right, Treacle. I'm very well. How are you?
Oh, I'm delightful, thanks. I'm all right. Freshly shaved slaphead. I'm good to go. I'm in business. And yeah, I'm all right. On the day that the six rule, the big six rule has been announced. Yeah, we're doing all right.
There's only 5 of us on the Zoom, so you should be safe.
We're fine. We're absolutely fine. As always, we're joined by our awfully nice. He's looking a bit trim, by the way. Looking a bit trim. And I won't mention why Taz mentioned he's looking a bit trim, but he's our delightful audio producer Josh. How are you, my friend?
Very well, thank you. Very well indeed. I mean, it's lovely to hear that you think that I'm trim. I'll certainly take that. To be fair, I did trim my beard today, so that might potentially be a couple of pounds lost off the face.
That took off a couple of stone. All the weights you've been lifting, Josh.
This is going to be a bantery episode. I can already tell.
It is. Yeah, we've all obviously had a bit of a week, so yeah. we're going to take it out on it. And we are also joined by the jolly green giant of the podcast. He this morning measured in at about 1,900,000 feet. It's Jack Saunders. Jack, how are you, my love?
Really good, thanks. I managed to get a few sneaky days away in the sun in Greece, which was lovely. I beat the quarantine. I went to Zante. I managed to find the Masonic temple in the town as well. I didn't get to go inside, but I found it on the outside, so that was a really good bonus for the trip.
Marvelous stuff. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us on this side and not kind of being half cut in Zante with a couple of WKD blues and all the rest of it. Right, so this one, chaps, we are going to dive into the only order, I think, on this series that I'm actually not in. And I think Taz, Josh, well, yeah, quite. Taz and Josh, are you guys in the Royal Ark Mariner?
No, I'm not. I'm in Mark, but I'm not in Ram.
Also in Mark, but not in Ram. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah, this is going to be a bit of an educational piece. But Jack, are you in the Royal Ark Mariner?
Yep, I am in the Royal Ark Mariners. I'm in Brentwood number 377, and I'm actually the current worshipful commander as well.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that as we crack on, but allow me to introduce our expert of the evening. It is Mr. Matthew Christmas. Matt, how are you, my friend?
Well, I'm not too bad, considering I'm going to be interrogated by 4 of you. So, yeah, I'm quite nervous, but I think I'm just about surviving. Had a day off today, so it's been a good day.
Fabulous. Love that. So I wonder if you can, before we dive into our interrogation, give a bit of a background of yourself, how you got interested and involved in Freemasonry, and the Royal Ark Mariners in particular.
I mean, it is quite extraordinary that I got interested in Freemasonry, as the first thing I found out about it was a book I saw in our library in my local town, which was called Freemasonry in My Life by Sir James Stubbs. This is the most boring book ever written on Freemasonry by anybody ever. Even though actually I met him and he was actually a really nice bloke. He was Grand Secretary for a long time, but it was very, very, very dull. Except there was some nice pictures of chaps in regalia. I thought, this is interesting. And then when I was at university, I found out that one of my big drinking buddies, as it was a Mason. He joined at university, and he said, why don't you join the University Lodge? It's one of the very first university lodges in Oxford. It's called Apollo University Lodge 357. So I joined it towards the end of my 3rd year. And
the best name, sorry to interject, the best name.
It's a cool name. It's a cool name.
My puppy, my Whippet puppy is called Apollo, and I've got headphones in, so we possibly couldn't have heard that, but I will let him know. If you need a mascot, please
yeah,
feel free.
absolutely. He is, of course, the god of youth and light and sort of learning. So utterly inappropriate for the Apollo University Lodge, apart from the fact that most of us are young. It's a massively interesting lodge. It's got from the very highest in the land to the lowest in the land, and of all ages. So I went in at 20, but you could always join at 18. Lots of people do. In fact, my son went in at 18 and is now senior deacon, which is good to see. So I got initiated and passed and raised in the lodge in 4 months. And then I was exalted in the Royal Arch chapter pretty quickly. And then the next week, having been exalted in the Royal Arch chapter, I joined the Mark and absolutely loved the Mark. So I'm glad you're all in the Mark. But I have to say, Neil, Josh, Taz, shame on you for not being in the Royal Arch Mariners. The only possible excuse you could have is if there is no Mariner Lodge moored to your Mark Lodge. As a secretary of a Mark and a Mariners, I always slightly ticked off with those brethren who sort of refused to join. But it's their loss. I think it's the best degree in Freemasonry. And I went into it in 1991. I'm a past commander of the Oxford University Lodge, I'm 55. And I'm now once again the scribe. That's the word for secretary in the Mariners, and I love it. I mean, lots of other things too. I mean, most orders in Freemasonry, I think, but I'm passionate about the Royal Arch Mariner. I love it more than anything else. And people think you're a bit weird. If you ask them in a kind of, what do you think my favourite degree in Freemasonry is? They'll give you anything apart from the Mariners, unless they're in the Mariners, and they go, yeah, I can see that. So that's me, and I've been a Mason for rather a long time now, and yeah, over 30 years. Just a bit scary. That's me. And I also, my own interest is, I mean, I used to be a history teacher for a long time and now work for a charity, educational charity. But my interests, just to bore you, are Masonic history. I promise I won't bore you with that today, unless you really ask me. But I'm really interested in ritual. I like performing it. I like watching it. I like reading about it. I like making connections with it. And that is my sort of geeky Masonic thing. I also like being in the Masonic Craft Beer Society, which as you know, Neil is one of the great leaders of, and it's an excellent innovation during lockdown and beyond, I think. That's enough from me for now.
If I can just kind of defend myself slightly, I think the problem that we do have,
all of us,
yeah, the issue we do have is that our Mark Lodge is kind of faffing around with the idea of there's something going on with trying to set up a RAM as well, but it's been talked about for about a year and a half, but I don't know if it's ever actually come to fruition yet. So I'm sure as soon as that does all fall into place, we will be the first ones ready to go.
And what you could do, of course, guys, is you could get your Mark Lodge to take over a Mariner Lodge that is perhaps failing a bit locally. And
so I think
we're doing that.
I think Taz is right. We're actually taking over a Ram Lodge, which is Maplesby Ram. I think they have 2 meetings, and we're having one of them on the same morning as our Mark Lodge, if I'm right. Taz, is that right? And then we've got.
I think so. I think it's our July meeting that is on the same day.
Building that Ram Lodge and taking it over in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, unfortunately, due to the Corona situation, that information may be incorrect in terms of whether it's in July or it's in our kind of Jan meeting, but it's one of the two. One of the two.
But can you give us a little bit more of a background as to what the story is for RAM?
Mariners, it's based around obviously the story of Noah, patriarch Noah. So in fact, it's of the stories and legends in Freemasonry, it is by a long way the oldest story. And as you all know, the story of the Great Flood goes across all cultures and all religions. And obviously it is the importance of the degree. It's all about the providence of God, obviously, in saving Noah and his family from the deluge and the flood that destroyed everybody else for their sins, and why he was picked out. And obviously Noah is a bit of a prototype for a sort of Messiah figure. He's the second Adam because he he refounds the human race. And he's an interesting figure, actually. So it's all about Noah, and the master of the lodge is called the Worshipful Commander. He commands the ark, and so he's Noah, Worshipful Commander Noah. You're a past WCN, and his two wardens are in fact two of his sons. So the senior warden is called Japheth, and the junior warden is called Shem, and two of his sons. So it's very much sort of dad and his two sons chatting with themselves about bringing other people into what we call the Ark of Safety. So that's what it's about, the providence of God and getting other people to find out about that story. Is that anything else you'd like to know specifically? I can't say too much, go give too much away, but
yeah, of course. No, I think that's that's kind of sums it up, just to give an idea as to what the story's about. I think that's one of the most interesting things about this podcast series, is just finding out so many people have heard about all of these different orders, but perhaps don't have a clue as to where they come from or what the kind of relevance is.
I mean, people laugh a bit, Josh, at the fact that we all wear these rainbow bordered aprons and rainbow collars, but of course the reason is that the rainbow is the symbol of God's new covenant with the people, that he will not send the flood again provided they are obedient. So yeah, I think we're known for being sort of very colourful degree, and it's by far the most colourful in terms of the regalia, but but that's the reason. It's the rainbow is that universal symbol of the providence of God, who we of course call the great commander of the universe, because in every degree in Freemasonry we give him a slightly different title, but that's what he is in that one.
Matthew, throughout this series, we've looked at all the different degrees, and we've been finding out what's specifically unique about the individual degrees. What would you describe as something that is unique to the Royal Ark Mariners?
I think there's several things about it. I mean, it's a remarkably simple degree in that the story is well known to everybody in it. It's not a story you don't know. You all knew it from nursery stories. So it's a very simple degree in that respect. You're not going to find out anything new. There's no surprising subplot to what happened after the flood. But the simplicity should not be confused with the depth of thought in the ritual. And I'm sure, Jack, you know that. And when you're made a commander, when you have the installation of the commander, it's a very beautiful ceremony, we won't go into, but you really feel that you're part of a group of lucky people to be the commander with the past commanders. But also in the much longer ceremony, the simplicity is one of the things that is, for me, unique. It's a beautiful degree. It's a simple degree. It teaches some very clear lessons, but in a very relaxed but profound way. And I particularly like that it isn't trying to be revelatory. It hasn't got any sort of hocus pocus or any sort of special secrets are revealed. It is just a lovely story, and you as the candidate are reminded of this story and you're taken through it. The other,
sorry, Matt, I was going to ask, and is that the elevation ceremony, right? So there's kind of how many ceremonies are there? Is it just the one, or?
Sorry, so I missed the question because I made an error.
So I know. I said so. You're obviously you're talking about the simplicity, the kind of the beauty and simplicity, but not to confuse that with depth. Is that the ceremony that you were referring to, and kind of, is there just one ceremony, or is there kind of like
the ceremony of elevation? Let's get that clear, and then there is the commander's installation, which is quite a short ceremony, with a board of installed commanders, as you'd be used to in the Mark or in the Craft. And there's a separate bit where just the past commanders and past masters go in. No, so there's only one ceremony. I think the other part of it is the lodge. The lodge is shaped as a triangle. The triangle being the symbol of the deity, which we see in all sorts of degrees. And that's also quite nice, because the triangle, we often dine in a triangle, in our tables in a triangle. So the triangle is quite a big thing, and it's talked about a lot. Obviously, the triangle's got 3 points, and there are 3 particular points that we look at: wisdom, strength, and beauty, not surprisingly. And interestingly, in most degrees, you have to advance to the east in a particular way, and some of them are quite ridiculous. I mean, I always slightly try not to laugh during the passing ceremonies. You see the senior deacon, the canon, trying to do that particular set of steps to get to the east. But it's quite complicated in the Mariners, but actually rather beautiful. And each step is explained in a rather beautiful way by the senior warden. He explains each of the steps that takes you to the east. And I think that's particularly fine. The other unique thing, or I think there are three unique things, which we could talk about later perhaps, is that it's the story of Noah used to be massively important in English Freemasonry, but it is no longer, and it was pushed out, in fact. That's my contention. Other things say the same. So it's the only degree, only mainstream degree that actually still has Noah in the story. And, you know, the patriarchs were so important originally. So I think it's particularly nice to have that. He's a more, the legend of Noah is more complex than many people realize. And once you've learned to become mariner, you might start looking at Noah separately, and you'll find out all sorts of interesting things about him.
I think one other interesting thing that's good to mention is about when you take your obligation in the order, you don't take it on a volume of the Sacred Law or a book that we would normally in another order. In the Royal Ark Mariners, you take your obligation on the porphyry stone.
Yeah, I mean, other constitutions that don't use the porphyry stone, they do use a volume of Sacred Law. But yes, unusually in the Mariners, it's a piece of stone. And actually, it's not terribly well explained in the ritual why it's this porphyry stone. But actually, if you study Noah in a bit more detail, look at some of the actual some of the books that aren't in the Bible because they weren't considered in the Apocrypha and that sort of thing. And in Hebraic legend, you'll find there's some interesting reasons of why it's a stone. I won't go into that here, but it's the only degree which has that unusual piece. And you also take your obligation standing up, which is also unusual. Unless you're Jewish, of course, but you'd always stand up.
Nice. That's actually really, really interesting. And my interest has been piqued. So what I'd like to kind of understand is really how you qualify to join the Royal Ark Mariners.
It's incredibly easy, Taz. You have to be in a Mark Lodge, and there's historical reasons for that, which we could go into because they're a bit controversial. But all you have to be is a Mark Master Mason, and as you know, to be a Mark Master Mason, you have to be a Master Mason. So once you're a Master Mason, you've got your third degree, you can go straight into the Mark. And interestingly, it's still the case in some areas, but certainly in the early part of the last century, if you either joined the Mark or the chapter in some parts of the country, never the twain would meet. And there was quite a lot of animosity if you joined the Mark from Royal Arch people and vice versa. And you still see that case in some other countries, actually. The two are they almost vie, I think, to be the next step in Freemasonry. And there's, again, historical reasons why the chapter is that in this country. But
I bucked the trend. I joined the Mark before I joined chapter.
I think I did as well.
I did also. Yeah, I did as well. And I would gladly nail my colours to the Mark mast if I was in a fight between Mark and chapter. I'd be on the Mark team.
I mean, I think you should join the Mark first. I think, despite the pressure to join the chapter, I'm a great fan. I love the chapter, actually, although I didn't really get it apart from until I became principal sojourner and began to do the ritual. Then I really got to enjoy the chapter. And then becoming a principal, I really enjoyed that. But there is this idea that the Mark is part of the second regular step in Freemasonry, and there are real connections between the Fellowcraft degree and the Mark degree, and therefore I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's also, the Mark is beautiful and relaxed as well, which also helps because the craft can be a little bit serious sometimes. And then I think if you sort of serve your time in the quarries in the Mark, then it's not a bad time to join the chapter. But I think the chapter needs a little bit more knowledge because obviously there's a big historical gap between Master Mason and Royal Arch Companion, and the Mark fills that. Now, of course, the Mariners doesn't fill that at all, but I would say always join the Mariners because it's a little treat. So you should definitely. But yeah, no, I think a lot of people prefer the Mark. I just say that I think the chapter is really good as well, but I think you have to start doing the chapter ritual yourself. And it can be a long time till you do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think when I joined the mark, it was the first thing I did outside of kind of craft masonry. So, yeah, you kind of you start, you join, you learn a little bit, but then it's one of those orders that you can sit back a little bit and really enjoy it, and your understanding kind of evolves the more you attend. Whereas, yeah, I certainly agree with chapter, the Holy Royal Arch. There is a lot more mystery and a lot more kind of hidden meaning and hidden understanding. So yeah, I completely agree.
I think also, you know, if I can say so, you're all young chaps. I'm 53, so I'd like to say I'm young, but I joined young, and I definitely think that the mark is a great step, particularly for the younger mason, because I think we all know there's quite a lot of humour in the mark, but actually that humour really conceals a quite fundamental truth. I love that piece at the end where the master says, among master masons, you will always find friends, and I think it's often known as the friendly degree, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think you learn a lot by watching the mark, and also there's lots of officers in the mark, so you're very quickly doing something, which is great because you learn by doing. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
Does that friendship element to it, does that transfer into the RAM as well, or is it kind of a different vibe or a different mood?
I think it's a slightly different mood, sort of mood. There's not the humour, I think, in the Mariners, but I think what's particular, I mean, as you know, the mark is a very senior degree in Freemasonry, and obviously His Royal Highness Prince Michael of Kent, Duke of Kent, our Grand Master's younger brother, is the Grand Master, and it's the next, if you like, serious degree where to get grand rank is incredibly impressive. And the nice thing is that as we can look at in the Royal Arch Mariners, rank and the differences in rank shown by your regalia are almost not there at all. So whilst you're in a mark lodge, you may have Provincial Grand Master or representatives coming in, there'll be the usual fuss and bother with that and being announced and demanding admission and all that. That tends to happen very little in the Royal Arch Mariners. And often, as you can't tell when you go in as a candidate, you can't tell who's senior and who's not, because the regalia is very similar across all ranks. So I think it's got that really relaxed, we're all in it together feel, which I particularly like. I'm not a fan of rank and structure in that respect. And I think the Mariners is the model for all other degrees, personally, I think.
So mentioning the regalia there, this is obviously a good chance to jump in and ask, can you tell us a bit more about the regalia of the order?
Yeah, I mean, as you'd expect, there's an apron and there's a jewel, as there is in most degrees. The apron is a lambskin apron, as you'd expect. It's got a rainbow-coloured border, and actually the flap is circular, not triangular, as many aprons used to be. And once you go in, you have 3 rosettes. The same way you'd have 3 rosettes as a master mason or as a mark master mason, and they're also in a sort of rainbow colour. And the jewel is a rainbow ribbon, and it has underneath it has a dove, has a rainbow, and from the rainbow is a dove bearing an olive branch in sort of silver gilt. It's quite simple. When you go into the chair, the only thing that changes is that your 3 rosettes become 3 simple silver gilt triangles. And obviously there's an officer's collar, as there is, but it looks the same. It's obviously a rainbow colour. If you are given a promotion, there's only 1 rank, and that's provincial grand rank in the Mariners. You're not a past overseer or a past sword bearer or anything like that, or an active inspector of work for an active deacon. You just get Royal Arch Mariner provincial grand rank, and you get the only difference is that you get a little collarette with it has the arc on it, on a triangle. And
you had me at collarette. I'll join anything for a collarette.
Oh yeah,
love a good collarette.
Yeah. And of course some lodges wear them at dinner, which has become a bit of a custom over time. Some don't. And then of course if you get grand rank, you just have Royal Arch Mariner grand rank. The only difference is that your 3 triangles are gold gilt color, and you have the same very, very similar collarette. They're almost identical, and a very, very similar collar, this time though with a gold triangle and a gold arc. So it's really very hard. The only people who have a really fantastic collarette are those in the Grand Master's Royal Arch Council. Very few of those. They are the top governing body of the order, and they have a really curious sort of globe with wings. It's a bit like the snitch in Harry Potter. And that's a very strange thing you see, but yeah, you're not going to see them very often. So it's incredibly simple and actually cheap as well. So if you get promotion, you haven't got much to buy, and you haven't got to worry it's the right rank. It's dead easy, and and I think that translates into the way you socialize with each other. It's just very, very relaxed. It's a bit like, for me, the real benefit of the Zoom calls over lockdown is you can be on a Zoom call, as I have been, with Grandmasters of this order and very senior Freemasons, and no one knows because you're wearing your civics. And it's a bit like that in the Mariners. You're all wearing, your aprons and collars and collarettes in rainbow, but that's it. We look incredibly the same, and that is all part of being. It's the new world after the flood. Everyone's pretty much on the level.
Isn't it interesting how people seem to think Freemasonry is the great leveler, and they all say everyone's equal in Freemasonry and whatnot, but it sounds like in comparison to some orders where people who have got promoted have these big extravagant kind of mark regalia, to name a few. Obviously you've got the AMD regalia, you've got the big kind of embroidered kind of officers' collars and whatnot, but the RAM just sounds quite minimal in terms of that. You kind of, which I really like, and it makes it sound like everyone has that kind of, someone's gone through the chair, so they've got the triangles, but it's not like Smash Mouth, like a Smash Mouth kind of promotion. And
because it's going to be at the very minimum your third step, in that you'll have definitely been a Master Mason and a Mark Master, and it could be your third degree. Most people in the Mariners are pretty into it. They like their Freemasonry by now. They got an idea, and they're perhaps a bit less impressed with all that, I think.
Okay, well, I'm a bit wound up because I thought I was going to, stay at a distance to this one because I'm not really in it. I'm trying to kind of distance myself. It's kind of peak as Taz said, it's kind of piqued my interest. So I think I'll probably be taking the dive whenever we go back into regular society, whenever that is. But my question to you, Matt, is what or who is the perfect candidate for the Royal Ark Mariners? So, what kind of mindset or would the perfect candidate need to have?
Well, of course, it's universal, so it doesn't discriminate on any particular faith. It's the same as we have in the craft, Mark and the Royal Arch. So nobody's excluded, which I think is an important thing. I'm in lots of the Christian orders, and I always feel a little bit uncomfortable that my Jewish Muslim friends, are not able to attend. And I think that's a really nice thing about the Mariners, is that it is universal. I think you don't. The worst candidates are those who join because they want another promotion, and you're definitely not going to get that in the Mariners. You're going to get stuck in very quickly because it's got the same sort of officers you have in the craft. It has obviously 2 wardens, 2 deacons. It's got an inner and outer guard and DCs and things. So because they're often quite small Mariner lodges, you are going to get into office pretty quickly. It was my first chair, actually, as it happens. So I went in 91 and became a Mason 89, and I was commander in 98, just before I had a craft chair. So I think you're going to get a chair pretty quickly. I don't know, Jack, is it your first chair?
So I did the Mark chair. I think that was the February, and then in the November I was in the commander's chair at the same time. But my Mark was my first chair.
It's one of those two, nearly always, isn't it? But there's 3 more officers in the Mark, so you sometimes end up jumping a bit. But I think Neil, you need to be pretty. You know you're going to go into office pretty quickly, I think, and so don't join the Mariners who just want to sit back and watch. They tend to be, not always, but relatively small lodges, and therefore it's getting stuck in early on and enjoying it.
I think a question from me, just in terms of kind of like getting involved, getting into chairs. I know with like, as an example, the Holy Royal Arch and chapter, it's suggested that you become like the master of your craft lodge before you go through the principals chairs because there are more secrets, there are more explanations that pertain to the inner workings. Are there those kind of restrictions in the RAM, for example? Would you have to go through the Mark Master's chair to kind of get elevated and installed into the RAM?
Well, you're supposed to, and if you don't, as I didn't, you have to get a dispensation for which the lodge has to pay. And I was actually only the other day teasing Dan Heath, who's assistant grand secretary at Mark Messers Hall. I said, how much money does Mark Messers Hall make on these dispensations? Because I reckon at least a third of Royal Ark Mariner commanders have not been through the Mark chair, and he feigned not to know. But I think it's a bit of racket. So no, I don't think you have to. I mean, you don't have to, of course, anymore be the master of the lodge to become the principal in the chapter, but it's not a bad idea in some ways, I think, because it is quite they're big steps. But no, I think because there's no ritual connection at all between the Mark and the Mariners, and they're only joined together really by historical accident, or rather historical devious politics, in fact. There's no connection ritually, so there's no need to go through it. No. But if it is going to be your first chair, as it was mine, it's not a bad first chair to have, because it's quite a simple ceremony. Although there are 7 lots of signs, which is my one thing I don't like about it. 7 signs, of which you will never give 5 of them ever again.
Got it.
That's my only slight annoyance. There are just too many signs.
7.
Jack laughing.
I think you had Neil at 7. He was like, yes. You can see it in his face.
No, quite the opposite. I'm not going to remember all of those.
No idea what the 5th sign is, because you've never ever given it, except when you are the candidate or the commander. So no, apart from the fact there are too many signs, it's actually a relatively simple, although beautiful degree. So it's a lovely one to have first, and yeah, it's very intimate. And so I think it's a really I would say get into Mariners quickly, because you can learn on the job, if you like, for the other chairs without in any way not giving the RAM your best.
And there was just one little bit of ritual that I always think is particularly fantastic. I'm just going to read it. I do know it, but I thought I'll get the words right this time. Where is it? Those in the highest sphere of life have the largest province wherein to do good, but those of an inferior degree will be as eminently distinguished if they move regularly and prove useful members of society. The highest is he who performs his part best, not he who fills the most exalted position. Yeah,
I agree with you, Jack. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's absolutely right. It's not about the rank; it's about the effort you put into it, and it doesn't matter what your job is. You might be just assistant director of ceremonies, or but you do your little bit that you have to do, and actually junior deacon doesn't do terribly much. He follows the senior deacon around, has a little bit to do, but not very much again. But if you make a mess of it in a small lodge room in a triangle, it's a real mess. And so the little things, everyone has to work together well. I don't know about you also, Jack, but I often find when I go, you'll find this since you're through the chair, you'll turn up and suddenly you'll be asked to be senior warden suddenly. So there's a lot of that happens. So you'll get the chance to show what you can do. Do the best you can.
I think sometimes I think people see it as an add-on degree, but actually it is a full degree, and often it's not even called a degree, but a fraternity of mariners rather than a degree. So it's like an extra.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And in fact, I can tell you it's a really geeky knowledge. The word degree is only used 4 times in the ritual. Fraternities use a lot more. And that has happened over time, actually. The fraternities come in more. And it is the Honourable Fraternity of Royal Ark Mariners. I mean, it really shouldn't be part of the Mark degree. It has been, in other times, an entirely independent degree, although it's a check of history. The only good thing, though, about being, I'd like it to be its own degree, except that you then have to have endless rank systems. So in some ways, although I could campaign to have a Grand Lodge of Royal Ark Mariners once again, it would mean there's a whole lot of rank. And so actually, and the Mark's lovely. So if you're going to be attached to any other order in Freemasonry, the Mark's pretty good to be attached to. So I think I'm happy with it. But historically, it's a nonsense.
Beautiful.
Well, Matthew, thank you for giving us a whistle-stop tour, and of course, I'm sure we've all got plenty more questions, but for the sake of trying to keep it down to a podcast-sized conversation, and I suppose on that, I'm sure you're well aware by now that we have our elevator pitch challenge, which we've been asking all of our guests to give us a very snappy pitch as to why anyone out there who's listening who is eligible should join the RAM. And we've had some interesting. Let's bring up the score. No. So at the top, we've still got Knights Templar. Did a cracking job. Actually, ended up coming in at under 30 seconds. And then, though unfortunately I wasn't there for our last episode on the Scarlet Cord, to be honest, I don't think anyone actually timed it because it was a fantastic effort by Ian Currens that I've just put it in as a minute.
When it's the Grand Master and he's such a lovely chap, I think you let him win because he deserves it. He's a great guy.
Yeah. I mean, it was a fantastic job, but the timing kind of got a little bit forgotten about. So with that in mind, of course, I hope you're prepared for your elevator pitch challenge.
Before I start, so Neil told me this on Monday. We had a bit of a chat. And I said, I'll practice. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Of course, did I know? So I've been busy. I got distracted today. So I'd like it to be made known, although I knew it was going to happen. I've absolutely not practiced this. This is my excuse for coming in. Is it if I just do 10 seconds? Is that the best? Or am I trying to hit 30? I'm trying to hit 30 seconds.
30 is the goal.
That's where you got to go.
30 seconds is to try and get as close as you can. So there is room at the top. There is a bit of a tussle at the top there, but 30 seconds is the goal. So
you're on. I've also got my timer here, so I'll keep an eye on you. Make sure you're not blocking me. Not that I'm competitive or anything, obviously.
All right then. So, Josh, do you want to get your stopwatch or your timer ready?
I'm ready to go.
We'll start the proceedings.
Drink a bit of a gargle.
Right, go on then, Josh.
Ready, boys?
Are we ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1, go.
You really ought to join the Royal Ark Mariner degree. It has the oldest of all the stories in Freemasonry, that of Noah and the flood and what happens after the flood. It is a particularly beautiful, friendly degree, and that is wonderful. It has simple regalia. Because it's attached to the mark, rank is of absolutely no importance. The ritual is particularly beautiful, and I'd like you to, when you get the chance to be commander, you'll be astonished at the beauty of that ceremony, which is special.
Okay.
Ooh.
Not a bad effort. Not a bad effort.
Well, thanks very much. I'm sweating here.
Where do you think you've come on the leaderboard?
I don't know. Well, I reckon I was about 29 seconds and a bit, maybe.
Okay. So,
not when I'm nervous.
That your elevator pitch was 31.85, which puts you third place after the Red Cross of Constantine.
It's a medal.
I'm gutted. I have to say, I'm gutted. Absolutely. No, I'm gutted. Okay, it's bronze. Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. Very British to win the bronze, isn't it?
Flip the table.
Well, of course, there is only one more episode left. So we've got Mark Master Masons is our next episode. So, you've only got to, as long as they don't come in before you, you will still be on the...
Who's doing the mark then?
Oh, we can't reveal that on this one. We'll be putting out a little announcement. We need to keep it cryptic.
Cryptic. That's the wrong degree.
Yeah, wrong order.
Absolutely wrong order.
Exactly that. Well, listen, Matt, I just want to thank you so much for joining us this evening to deep dive into the Royal Ark Mariner. It's clear to me that this should be an order I should look into. I feel a little bit kind of guilty doing a Beyond the Craft and not being in it, but we'll change that. It'll be fine. And yeah, I again from on behalf of all of us, I just want to thank you all. Thank you so much for jumping on.
It's been great. Thank you so much, Neil. So, Jack, if you are obviously can still be in the chair, I imagine. I can. I'm in Surrey, not that far from Essex. Would love to come and see you in the chair. And chaps, Josh, Taz, Neil, if and when you join the Royal Ark Mariners, let me know, and I'll come along and support you, because it's always good to visit, as we all know. Anyway, I've had a blast, and it was much nicer than I thought it would be. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Of course, you can find out loads of information about the Royal Ark Mariners and all of the different degrees that we've been looking at on this series at markmasonshall.org. And you can also find out more information and listen to all of our old episodes, as well as seeing all of the incredible YouTube videos that Jack puts together on our website, brothermasonic.com. We've also now put an electronic version of the leaderboard up there. So if you want to see who's in the top spot on the elevator pitch leaderboard, you can see that now as well at brothermasonic.com.
Awesome. So that is the end of our penultimate episode of Brother Beyond the Craft. I never thought we would be saying that so soon. Please continue to leave us amazing reviews on the likes of iTunes, on Spotify, on Buzzsprout, on Stitcher. And if you are in the Royal Ark Mariners and you want to show Matthew some love and the order some love, please do tweet us at Brother Masonic. But that is it from the Brother team for this week.
We will be back with our final Brother Beyond the Craft very, very soon. Please keep your eyes on our social media, as Taz mentioned, where we will be announcing the next podcast. And remember, we are brother, you are too. Thank you so much for listening.
This is Brother Beyond the Craft with Neil Thomas Allen and Taz Bachu. This was a Brother production in association with Mark Mason's Hall, presented by Neil Thomas Allen and Taz Bachu, with Jack Saunders, produced by Joshua Worley. You can follow us on social media at Brother Masonic on Facebook and Twitter.